Hello class, I'm here to deliver my lecture on writing a lesson plan. Remember that in our class, you are required to write a lesson plan following the Madeline Hunter format. Today, you will learn what that format is and how to go about planning for your lesson. Let us begin. But first, I would like for you to imagine a contractor who builds a house as he pounds along using scrap lumber and duct tape wherever he finds them. Will that work? Or a doctor who does not plan adequately for a surgery? Or a teacher teaching a lesson with no clear direction? Do you think that teacher can accomplish her objectives? Do you think the students will learn effectively? No, it is very important to plan. As Winston Churchill said, he who fails to plan is planning to fail. As a teacher, you never want to plan to fail, and therefore, we need to learn how to plan for our lesson. How do you begin writing a lesson plan? These are just some of the questions that you need to ask as you plan and think about what you're going to do in class. Number one, ask yourself, who are my learners? That includes their age level, their characteristics, what they can and cannot do, what they know and they do not know. Next, you need to ask yourself, what do they need to learn? And in order for you to know that, you need to know where to go in the TEKS to find the objectives for your students. Then you ask yourself, how can my students best learn a particular topic, skill, or attitude? And then lastly, ask yourself, how much time do I have to teach? Let's continue. Consider using the concept of backwards design. Before beginning the lesson plan writing process, you can first determine what specific content or skills you know the students need to master at the end of the lesson. For that, you need to consult the TEKS for your grade level. Then think about what activities will lead students to that end goal. Now let us talk about the Madeline Hunter model. There are many ways to plan your lesson, and there are many different formats for a lesson plan. But one that I will teach you today is the Madeline Hunter format or model. These are the parts of the Madeline Hunter model. 1, anticipatory set, then objectives, 3, instructional input, 4, modeling, 5, checking for understanding, 6, guided practice, 7, independent practice, and 8, closure. Let's talk about the anticipatory set. You need to ask yourself this question as you are thinking about the anticipatory set of your lesson. In what way will you activate your students' prior knowledge and experience to help them relate to today's lesson? Getting students ready and or excited to accept the instruction is part of your job as a teacher. Students may come to school sleepy or unmotivated to learn, and therefore you need to think of ways to get them motivated. The key word in this part of the model is the word anticipatory, from the word anticipate. You want your students to anticipate what's going to happen in the lesson. So do something that creates a sense of excitement in your students. It could be, giving them a short activity, could be a game, a picture, a cartoon strip, a short discussion, viewing a film, doing a reflective exercise, or maybe some quick writes. Now let's go to thinking about your objectives. What should students be able to do, understand, and care about as a result of your teaching? For your objectives, you always have to consult the TEKS for your grade level. You do not teach just because it's your favorite lesson. You don't teach about dinosaurs because it's fun for the kids. No, consult the TEKS. The TEKS is your Bible. That gives you the direction for your teaching. So, let your students know what objectives, what are the goals for that particular period. It will be helpful to write the objective on the whiteboard or have it projected in your projector. Use the Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives in planning your lesson plan. And of course, always check the TEKS. These are some examples of lesson plan objectives. I'd like you to notice the verbs that are underlined and bolded. Students will label the 4 life stages of a frog. Students will compare the results of World War I and World War II using a Venn diagram. And students will order color blocks into a pattern. Remember that we use operational objectives or verbs, okay? Label, compare, order are all specific and operational verbs, meaning they are observable and measurable. I will send you a link about the Bloom's taxonomy objectives so you can have all the verbs and check them out and make sure that you use operational verbs or specific verbs when you write out your lesson objectives. The third component of the Madeline Hunter model is the instructional input. What knowledge will you communicate to the student? Instructional input is your explicit teaching. It is the section of your lesson plan stating exactly what you're going to teach. So if you're going to teach about verbs in your lesson plan, you may want to put the definition of verb, example of verbs, different types of verbs, but make sure that it is stated clearly. Number 4, modeling. Ask yourself, how will you show or demonstrate the skill or competence so students will also be able to do it, to do what you were modeling? Make sure that students get it right by showing them how to do a certain skill or how to do something. The teacher, you use materials to show students examples of what is expected as an end product of their work. Do not commit assumicide. Do you know what that is? That is assuming that students know what they're supposed to do. No, you are the teacher and you are supposed to show your students what is expected of them. Show them the skill that they need to learn. So if you're teaching them how to write, for example, an introduction for a short essay, you yourself should be writing the introduction. You yourself should be showing examples to the students. What is an introduction? How do you introduce a topic in an essay? We cannot just ask them to start writing an essay out of the blue. There must be lots of modeling, direct teaching, and samples for the students to know clearly what is expected of them. Number 5, checking for understanding. How will you check that the students have understood or learned the objectives? Or how are you going to monitor that they're understanding what you're teaching them? So think about activities which examine the student's possession of central and essential information to achieve the stated objective. So one way you check for understanding is by asking questions. Another would be by going around the classroom and monitoring their work. Number 6, guided practice. What activities will the students perform under your supervision to ensure that they are able to practice the material? If they make mistakes, you're able to show them how to do it correctly. Before you ask students to do a final product, give them time to practice. Showing them what to do is not enough. They themselves have to practice. For example, my previous example was writing an introduction for an essay. Make them practice how to write introduction for essays before you actually ask for a final product. Make sure that students have it right. Can they reciprocate what you want them to do? This part of the lesson allows students an opportunity to demonstrate their understanding and by working through an activity or exercise under your supervision. In this part of your lesson, you are not testing your kids. You're allowing them to make mistakes. It is okay to make mistakes if they're practicing. Be sure that you give them time to practice. Next is independent practice. Remember that in the previous slide in number 6, it's guided practice. Guided practice means you are with them. You are monitoring what they're doing. You're checking them, checking on their work. But in independent practice, now you let them go. You let them do the skill or whatever you're teaching them, let them do it on their own. So ask yourself, what homework, seat work, activity should students do to successfully practice the material and skill that you're teaching them without your supervision? So this is the time where students practice the skill by themselves. Projects may also be assigned as a way for students to apply what they have learned during the guided practice. Finally, we go to closure. Ask yourself, how will you bring your lesson to an end? Bringing it all to a close, what did they accomplish? What did they learn? Make sure that at the end of the lesson, your students feel a sense of completion, that the lesson has ended. So one example that you can end a lesson is by summarizing what they've learned. And you do not summarize for them. Ask them for the summary. Ask them what they have learned. A good way to do that is to go back to the objective that you have posed for them at the beginning of the lesson and ask them if you guys have met the objective and what they learned. You can do that by asking the students to write an exit ticket. I know you're very familiar with this because we, in our class, we do this when we were still doing face-to-face instruction. I always ask you to write an exit ticket. Another would be a 3-2-1. 3-2-1 is a strategy that you can use in your class to bring closure. 3 means maybe 3 things that they have learned, 2 questions that they have in their mind about the lesson, and 1 thing that still is unclear, or 1 thing they will never forget, or 1 word that they learned from your lesson. That's the 3-2-1. There are many ways to close a lesson. But remember, for closure, you want your students to feel, the lesson has ended. I learned something. Okay? So be sure to plan how you will end your lesson. So to review, I'm just going to go back to all the parts of a Madeline Hunter lesson plan. These are anticipatory set, objectives, instructional input, modeling, checking for understanding, guided practice, independent practice, and closure. I hope that this video has helped you understand how it is to prepare a lesson and how to write a lesson. I will give you more information throughout the week about writing a lesson plan, and will also inform you of the due date, the requirements, and whatever else is necessary for you to complete this task. Remember that I am here to support you. I welcome your emails, and you can always schedule a phone call so that we can see each other or talk to each other and even see each other and collaborate. Thank you, and have a very blessed day.